Good morning. It is Saturday. We have finally made it to wild card weekend in the NFL. Zeno, how are we?
Good. We are doing well. A little chilly here in Atlanta today, so we are
Yeah.
hoping some hot football action will get us all hot and bothered by the end of today. But no, listen, it's exciting that Wild Card Weekend is here, and I guess it's a super Wild Card Weekend now since we have a Saturday, Sunday, Monday bonanza of football going on. But yeah, definitely glad we're at the NFL playoffs.
6 games spread out over 3 days. We're going to break down all of the Saturday games today. We have Iain MacMillan coming on to break down the games from Sunday. And then we'll wait till tomorrow and Monday to break down the Monday game because that's just getting too far ahead of ourselves. We have way too much to talk about until then. We're also breaking down a little bit of NBA action too and the conference championship odds. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's bet it. First of all, first game on Saturday, the Seahawks taking on the 49ers. Now, we talked about this game a little bit yesterday, but right now the Niners laying 9.5 points. This is two NFC West rivals that have already played twice this year. The Niners swept the series. The Seahawks made it in with a win and a Packers loss to the Lions. They are the underdogs. They want to prove everyone wrong. And I feel like they've kind of been doing that all season, right? But the 49ers have all of the weight of the world on their shoulders. They're the number 2 seed in the NFC. They want to win the whole thing. They're currently on a 10-game win streak. Do you see this being a game where the 49ers can cover in the 9.5? Because I'm kind of liking the Seahawks to get a backdoor cover and for the total to go under in this game because of especially 49ers defense.
Well, I think the back door will certainly be open. I don't necessarily know that you may need it, though. I mean, again, it's one thing that Pete Carroll has done very well over the course of his career, and that's sort of give problems to the San Francisco 49ers and in particularly Kyle
Yeah.
Shanahan over the last couple of seasons. So, these first two games this year were closer than expected, particularly the second one in Seattle. But, I think when you look at this matchup, Seattle is now going to face San Francisco on their third different quarterback. Like that's that they've faced all three quarterbacks on that roster at one point in time. So they're well prepared for all of this, and I think that that's something that sort of helps them out a little bit. They're going to have success running the football. They're going to have to figure out a way to try to keep San Francisco's offense off the field. Geno Smith is not the guy that he was the first 5, 6, 7 weeks of the year. Really, ever since that trip overseas, that Germany trip, everything sort of taken a downturn for Geno Smith. He's thrown 7 interceptions over the final 7 games. The Seahawks have lost 5 of their last 7 and needed help from Baker Mayfield to squeak out of there and get a playoff berth in their final win over the Rams. But still, all that together, when you look at this NFC West matchup, these games end up being closer than what they are. I think if there's one team that theoretically could pull off the upset or definitively get a cover from the 3 big spreads that are out there on Wild Card Weekend, Seattle is the one that I would pick.
Yeah, 9.5 is a lot of points to be getting. The one thing that makes me nervous is the Niners defense and how good they are. I mean, they're only allowing 16.3 points per game on the season. That's first in the NFL. They held the Seahawks to a total, Zeno, of 20 points over the 2 games so far this season. They
Yes.
also have 30 takeaways on the year. So Geno Smith is going to be seeing a lot of pressure under center.
You brought up a very important point about the takeaways. Now, let's just remember one thing objectively. If you go look at the 49ers since Brock Purdy has taken over this offense, right? And you're going to sit there and you're going to go, well, darn, since Brock Purdy took over, let's see, they've scored 33, 35,
Hmm.
21, 37, 37, and 38. Yeah, okay. So let's run down the stretch there. Turnovers against the Dolphins. 2 turnovers against the Buccaneers, 2 turnovers against the Commanders, 2 turnovers against the Raiders, 4 turnovers against the Cardinals. But when they played the Seahawks and won that game 21-13, there was 1 turnover by Seattle, and it ended up
Mm.
costing them. If you remember that game, because I remember I was on the Seahawks plus 3.5 on that Thursday night game at
Yeah.
home, and it was a turnover that ended up becoming backbreaking. It was a under 2 minutes. Geno Smith threw a pick, and it was returned inside the 5-yard line, and these 49ers ended up getting an extra touchdown out of it before half that they probably wouldn't
Mm.
have gotten otherwise. Because the worst case scenario, they punt it away and it's the end of the half, and likely, maybe they only get a field goal. You could say a minimum of 4 points, but a minimum of 4 points would keep you within the 9.5 where they are right now. I say all this to say that if Seattle takes care of the football today and doesn't give San Francisco extra opportunities, guess what? You're going to find out that Brock Purdy is just kind of average, right? Like I know the
Yeah.
numbers say that he's great and he's played really well, but he's been in very favorable situations on the offensive side of the ball, and he hasn't had a lot of long fields to work with because his defense gets a bunch of turnovers every game. That's going to be the key to this game. That and third down. The San Francisco 49ers are 6th in the NFL in converting third down conversions. Seattle 27th on the defensive side in preventing third down. So it's going to be a big matchup there.
Absolutely, yeah. And Brock Purdy, as solid as he has been, it's a lot of the pieces around him that make the team tick. Best defense in the NFL and superstars, superstars on the off. Yeah, I heard about this guy named Christian McCaffrey. He's pretty good. But I will say, Brock Purdy has done a good job protecting the football. He's thrown 13 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. So that has been pretty impressive for him, too. I do like the under, too. San Francisco held 8 of their last 10 opponents to under 20 points. And the total has also gone under in 4 of Seattle's last 5 games. That total right now set at 42.5. And because I'm betting the under, I am also betting the Seahawks plus 9.5, because if not many points are going to be scored, it's going to be hard for the 49ers to cover the 9.5, especially if Seattle can take care of this football. I think we're going to see a lot closer game than what people think maybe this game is going to be. So that one's going to be interesting. That is the 4 o'clock game today. So excited to be watching that one. Second up, we got the Chargers taking on the Jags, 8:15 tonight. Right now, the Chargers laying 2.5 points in this one. It did open up at Chargers minus 1.5. Then it was a pick'em. Now it's Chargers laying 2.5. That total is set at 47.5. Now the Jags are a team that got in the last moment with a win after defeating the Titans. They're the 4th seed in the AFC. They want to take advantage of home field. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now. The Chargers are the 5 seed in the AFC, and hoping to not Charger, they won 4 of their last 5 games to get to this point. It's crazy though, Zeno, and I know I said this yesterday too, but still, the Jags at the beginning of December were 4-8. The postseason was like so far out of reach for them. What they've done over the last 5 weeks to be able to turn it around, thanks to Trevor Lawrence and a defense that's held its last 5 opponents to an average of 15.6 points per game. This is going to be a tough game to call because I think the Chargers have the better quarterback, but they're going up against a really good Jags defense. I know the Jags haven't necessarily played like the most phenomenal offenses in the league over the last couple of weeks.
They've played some of the worst offenses in the league.
But still, it's a stat in their defense.
They played Zach Wilson on a Thursday night against the Jets. They played against, was it Davis Mills, whoever else was backing up in Houston, then in Joshua Dobbs. Like, I don't want to overstate the Jaguars' defense. Look, they've done their job. You're right. They have, and the numbers say that they haven't given up a lot of points. But they have not faced a quarterback like this anywhere in that fight. Last time they faced a quarterback like this, it was Lamar Jackson, and it was a 28-27 game that the Jaguars had to come back and win. But again, they lose to Lamar. They beat Lamar, but they lose to Patrick Mahomes. They're in a tight game against Derek Carr and the Raiders. So, I mean, it's really tough to gauge how prepared this Jaguars defense can be against one of the best pass offenses in the league, and how much they're going to be able to affect Justin Herbert through blitzing, how much man coverage will they play, and sort of see if they can work things around that way, because typically a lot of quarterbacks are worse against man than they are against zone. So, and this is a bad tackling team for the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the worst tackling teams in the league. You got a lot of athletes on that Los Angeles side of the field. It's good. You're right. It's a very interesting matchup. I just think we need to look objectively about how the Jaguars got here and really, evaluate how prepared they are and how much this matchup is a bad one for them.
Yeah, the Jags are 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 home games against the Chargers. The Chargers' scoring margin in those games is plus 16. So if those trends continue, they're easily covering the spread on this one. Who do you think comes out on top? How are you betting this game?
Well, look, I think if you want to tease Jacksonville up to 8.5, you're likely going to feel pretty confident about being in that position. Why? Because the Chargers always seem to be in a 3 or 4 point game. That's just where they always are. Some of that is their head coach. Some of that is execution. They're not going to be without Mike Williams, which, again, nobody will seem to understand why Brandon Staley was playing these guys deep into the fourth quarter of a game that didn't matter. And you just sit there and say during the week before he was ruled out, well, rest was the most important thing. Hey, stupid. Rest was supposed to come in Sunday in the game against the Denver Broncos that didn't mean anything. That's when he was supposed to get the rest. So, you have that to contend with. But still, it's Austin Eckler, it's Keenan Allen. I mean, there's a lot of weapons on the field here for the Los Angeles Chargers, and they pass more than anybody in the league. Justin Herbert just drops back and slings it. And how can the Jaguars slow it down? So, I lean on the Chargers in this spot, minus the points, but I think I'm not even sure the spread matters here. I think you just lay the money line either way and walk out the door that way. Why even contend with the spread when this is the number where it is? And we've seen this thing settle in at 2.5 and not move off it with good reason. You're starting to see, I'm looking at a 50-50 split on one of the most bet games of the weekend right now as far as the tickets are concerned. So we're going to settle in a 2.5, maybe a little bit of liability on the Jaguars at minus 115 to take the 2.5 points here. I think teasing the Jaguars is probably a safe play. I don't want to, guarantee anything, of course, but I would probably lean on the Chargers to get a field goal win.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. The Chargers are 7-2 against the spread in their last 9 away games, 4-0-1 against the spread in their last 5 games overall. So if you're going by that trend, the money line will definitely hit, and they'll probably hit and they'll probably cover the spread too at that 2.5 by probably a field goal. I feel like this game is going to come down to the wire. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. We have 3 games on Sunday, and I know we're going to bring in Iain MacMillan in a second, but first of all, we'll start with this Dolphins-Bills game. Now, this one has been interesting because I was talking to Jared about this too, and we're like, the Bills are kind of playing, a half game this week. They're playing a Miami Dolphins team that has their third string quarterback under center. The line opened up at Bills laying 10. It moved to 7 when maybe Teddy Bridgewater, maybe Tua, the rumors were out they were going to play. Now it's up to 13.5, knowing Skylar Thompson is going to be starting under center. Now, the last time we saw the Dolphins and Bills play, it was like one of the best games we watched all season. It was in Buffalo. Tua was phenomenal. I mean, it was such a fun game to watch. This is not what we're going to see this week. The Dolphins barely snuck into that number 7 spot in the AFC. They want to pull off an upset, but we don't know what's going to happen. Defensively, they're banged up. Offensively, Waddle, Hill, both have bum ankles. I mean, we're not going to see the Miami Dolphins team. We saw the first 8 weeks of the season, but 13.5 points, Zeno, is a lot of points. Would you lay them with the Buffalo Bills, knowing how many pieces of the Miami Dolphins are either missing or not at 100%?
I'd lay it in the first half, minus 7. That I would.
That's good. I like
I think
that.
if you can find a 7 out there, and I'd be honest with you, I haven't checked. I'm just assuming that the line will be 7, but there may be 7. It may be 7.5, just because depending on how odds makers want to play it. If you can find a 7 out there, I'd lay the 7 in the first half. That's about the only way to play this thing. I don't know that you can do it any other way. And yeah, I see 7.5s out there. Just be interesting to see how it. Nonetheless, I don't know that you can trust Buffalo. I mean, look, Josh Allen to this point, we've seen have this red zone turnover, this interception that makes you scratch your head, that sort of keeps the team in the game. I mean, objectively, you could go back to last week in the game against the Patriots and say the Bills won it on 5 plays, 2 of them being kickoff returns for touchdowns. Other than that, they were probably thoroughly outplayed by the Patriots for 2.5 quarters. So I don't know if right now the Buffalo Bills are 14 points better than anybody. I see some 14s out there in the market at a couple of shops as I just look across the board here. I'm surprised that they're staying there that long, because I feel like that would be a buy point on Miami, because Buffalo, again, but here's the thing. If Buffalo can't cover, the 13.5, like, they're not going to cover the 14. Like, if Buffalo's going to cover 13.5, it's because they're winning by 3 touchdowns or more. Like, I have a hard time believing they're covering the 13.5 just by winning by 14. Could it be out? Could it happen? Yes, of course it could. But, I think Buffalo can take an early lead here, and then they sort of take their foot off the gas pedal. But it's one of those things where if they don't get out early and separate from Miami, the longer you let this Miami team hang around, the worse it's going to be. Mike McDaniel's got plenty of tricks up his sleeve. He's not immune from trying things that nobody's expecting. And so the quicker you can take Miami out of this game, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at Josh Allen too. He loves playing against Miami at home. I looked up some stats. His average home scoring margin against them in his 5 games at home is 16.6 points. He's thrown for 27 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions in 10 career games against them. And most of those games have been with a full, healthy Miami Dolphins team. I'm interested to see if he could pick them apart the way that he has been over his career with a team that is banged up right now. Also, Buffalo scored 32 points in each of their last 3 games. Miami scored 22 or less in 5 of their last 6. If those trends continue, I feel like Buffalo can cover the full 14, 13 and a half, but I do love your idea of the first half spread, and I'm definitely going to tell you on that and bet that game. The second game, which is really difficult to call, and let's bring in Iain MacMillan for this one too. He's a senior editor for BetSided and host of the Bacon Bets podcast to break some of these games down for us. Actually, before we move into the Vikings Giants game, let's talk about this Dolphins Bills game. First of all, Iain, hi, happy Saturday. How are we?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you on. We were just breaking out this Dolphins Bills game. Is 13 and a half points too much for the Bills to cover against a Miami team who has their third string quarterback in, has a banged up defense, and we have an animal coming into the screen. I love it. And an offense with two of their receivers with bum ankles at this point.
Yeah, my cat likes to get some attention on camera whenever I'm on a show, so she had to give her walk past the camera there. Yeah, I actually like the Dolphins in the spot. It is, I might be one of the few people on the Dolphins here. I think 13 and a half points is a little bit of an overreaction to Tua not playing. I unfortunately grabbed them at 10 and a half. I thought Tua was going to play. But I thought the line was at 10 and a half was if Tua wasn't going to play. So when he was announced out and it ballooned all the way up to 13 and a half, I did think that was a little bit of an overreaction. This Dolphins defense, their defense has been playing well the past few weeks. If you even just look at opponent yards per play, tied for first in the NFL over the last 3 weeks heading into the playoffs. So I think their defense has actually stepped up in Tua's absence. And the Bills have some red flags, mainly turnovers. Second in the NFL in giveaways per game, averaging 1.7. It is hard to cover an almost 2 touchdown spread if you're giving up the ball an average of 1.7 times per game. If you give up 2 turnovers, it's near impossible to cover that spread. So I'm going to take the Dolphins with the points. It's an ugly bet with Skylar Thompson, but I think it's the current line's a little bit of an overreaction to the Tua news.
Well, I'll add 2 things there, Ian. One, I think the 10.5 was the reaction to Tua not playing and the idea that Teddy Bridgewater was starting.
Right.
The 13.5 game when it was Skylar Thompson, who statistically and metrically is one of the worst passing quarterbacks in the NFL when graded out against his peers. That's part of the problem, is that Miami doesn't necessarily focus on the run all that much, and Skylar Thompson can't throw the ball with any measure of efficiency that's going to be able to make this offense score, and the numbers bear that out. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think 14 points is a lot, but like I said, Bills in the first half for me if we're going to go down that road. Now, that said, if you look beyond that game to the Giants and Vikings, one of the more interesting matchups here as the Vikings continue to lay 3 points. And there's a couple of different things I saw about this that were really, really odd. You know, if you look at this game, 90% of the money is on the Giants. Just 54% of the tickets, but 90% of the money. And books have not moved this off of 3, and I think with valid reason, because I think the books know that the Vikings is the right side, and the minute they put this down to 2.5, the Sharps are going to jump all over Minnesota here. However, I did hear a stat that gave me pause. Brian Daboll this year, 3-0 against the number in rematches, and if you exclude Chiefs games, he is 9-1 against the number in rematches as an offensive coordinator in Buffalo throughout his career. So this guy is clearly a coach who knows the second time around how to take advantage of what he missed the first time around. So how do you see the Giants and Vikings playing out?
Yeah, I am on the Giants side as well. It's certainly not one of my more confident plays, but to add to your points there about Dable, a couple things about this Giants defense specifically, and it's a big reason why I lean their way in this game, is their third down defense and red zone defense has actually been amongst the best in the NFL. And I think that's going to go a big way in this game. 5th in opponent third down conversion rate, and also 5th in opponent red zone touchdown scoring percentage. And actually in that first game, I know they obviously lost that game, close game, last second field goal, but they did outgain the Vikings in that game. 6.7 yards per play, the Giants average. The Vikings only averaged 5.0. So I think it's going to be another close one. I'll take the 3 points. But a bet that I like actually even more than that is actually a player prop in that game. For the Vikings, actually, KJ Osborne. I saw his receiving total at 38.5 yards. We saw late in the season, teams are really locking down Justin Jefferson, and that has completely opened things up for KJ Osborne. He's gone over this number in 3 of his last 4 games. 2 of those games were 100-yard plus receiving games. So if the Giants, if their defensive game plan revolves around shutting down Justin Jefferson, which obviously I think it'd be smart if it does, I think that opens things up. Not so much for Adam Thielen, but more for KJ Osborne, as we saw in the final stretch of the season.
Don't forget about TJ Hawkinson.
Oh, yeah, seriously.
13 catches for 100 and plus yards. I mean, between the two of them in the last game, it was a combined 25 catches for 242 yards. So they both present a problem.
Yeah, I know this total too is the highest total in the wild card slate, but I actually kind of like the over for this one too. Like the Vikings defense is really bad. They're just not good. And I know you talked about the Giants defense. They have gotten better over the last couple of weeks. They still have the fourth worst DVOA rating though. And they're allowing 21.8 points per game. So I kind of lean the over here too. I feel like points are not going to be hard to come by, and neither quarterback's going to have a hard time moving the ball in this one. But I'm excited. I'm rooting for the Giants. I have thought the Minnesota Vikings are frauds all season. At some point, when you win 11 of your 11 one-possession games, that luck is going to run out. You're not going 12-0. There's just no chance, right? Like, statistically,
also,
that's improbable.
The Giants are the second best team as far as one-score records this year. They are as fortunate as the Vikings are to have the record that they do.
That's
so
true.
You're taking fraud against fraud.
It's two frauds. Who comes out on top? Drum roll. We will see. Last but not least on Sunday. Oh, what were you?
I was just gonna say, all season these were the two teams that I called out as being the two most fraudulent teams. So you said it. So the good news is one of them will be headed home. The bad news is we'll have to watch a fraudulent team in the second round.
Spider-Man meme that you see, that Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other. Yeah, that's what this is.
Oh man, two frauds. One makes it out, one goes home. Who ends up on top? The drama. Can't even wait. On Sunday night, we have the Ravens taking on the Bengals. This one's going to be interesting. Right now, the Baltimore Ravens are getting 8.5 points. I liked the Bengals when they were laying 6.5. I bet it then, but 8.5 is kind of a lot. I know they kind of stumbled into the postseason, 1-3 record over the last 4 games. They lost to the Bengals last week in Week 18. The Bengals got their 8th win in a row, won 10 of their last 11 games. They have a lot of momentum right now. Are they going to carry that, Ian, into the postseason? Or is 8.5 too many points to be laying against a Ravens team that we don't necessarily know what to expect from them?
Yeah, Lauren, I was with you. I did bet on the Bengals when it was at 6.5. I feel a lot more comfortable with that number. I didn't think Lamar Jackson was going to play, so I jumped on that line early at 8.5. It makes me a little bit more nervous. I think now, if I was betting on the game at the current line, I might go with the under, just because I think since Lamar Jackson's out, I think the number is the Ravens have averaged 13 points a game since he's been out, which is just absolutely atrocious. So. Even with the total being at a low number of 40.5, I think if I was betting on the current line, I think I'd go the under. But my favorite play this weekend is actually a player prop in this game. Jamar Chase to go over 6.5 receptions. I was able to get it at plus money at plus 105, which seems kind of crazy to me because he's gone over 6.5 receptions in 8 straight games. Obviously, he missed a part of the middle season. But you'd have to go back to week 4 against the Dolphins for the last time Jamar Chase played in a game where he didn't haul in at least 7 receptions. And he got 8 last week against the Ravens. Ravens give up 23.2 completions per game, which I think is around 26th in the NFL. So for a player prop, love Jamar Chase to have a big game.
Yeah, and I would add to you too here, Ian, that a lot of people seem to think that the Ravens are sort of plug and play between Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley. It's just completely not accurate. I mean, he's another guy who grades out at the bottom of the league in passing statistics. And I think part of the reason why we haven't seen this number move even more is because we don't know if it's Tyler Huntley or Anthony Brown. But I would add either way, a player prop to look at. J.K. Dobbins' rushing yards is only at 62.5. If he doesn't clear that, this is blowout city. It's absolute. Why even bet the Ravens with the points? Take J.K. Dobbins over because it's the same thing. Essentially, in my mind, if he can't get to 70 yards rushing in this game, the Ravens have absolutely no chance to cover this number, period. Because that's the only way they're going to stay in the game is to be able to run the ball, keep Cincinnati on the sidelines, the offense on the sidelines, and try to kill as much clock as possible.
I like that play as well. That's a good one.
I also do. Okay, there's 2 games going on today. We have to get your plays. The 49ers taking on the Seahawks. Obviously, the Seahawks snuck in last week with a win after they picked off Baker Mayfield deep in overtime. And it was really sad because my Detroit Lions could have made it, Ian. They could have made it into the postseason.
Every day since Sunday, she's been doing this. She's so
I'm devastated. Like, Zeno, you have to understand. Zeno, you have to understand. I watched Michigan lose. I watched Michigan lose on New Year's Eve, and the Lions don't get in. It has been a very rough start to 2023. To be honest with you, the national championship game was tough for me to. Well, it was tough for a lot of people to watch because it was a blowout, but it was tough for me to watch because I knew I would have been there, and Michigan, my alma mater, would have been it. But that's neither here nor there. And I was like, okay, I still have the Lions. I still have the Lions. No, I don't have the Lions. So, yes, I'm bitter about it still. But they are getting 9.5 points against the 49ers, whose defense is exceptionally solid. They're first in the NFL this season. They're only allowing 16.3 points per game. Do you see this? Like, I kind of see this game, Ian, playing out as an under and a Seahawks backdoor cover. I want to see, how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I'm going to take the 49ers. I will say, obviously, I was rooting for the Lions getting the playoffs. That would have been fun. But at least it's not the Green Bay Packers. I'll take the Seahawks in the playoffs instead of the Packers again. So I guess I'll take that. But I am...
I'd rather watch Geno Smith over Aaron Rodgers. Yes, let's sign me up for that, please.
I'm sick of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Let's see some new faces in the playoffs, man. Come on.
I don't want new faces. I want the good faces, okay?
I am going to lay the points here with the 49ers, though. The Seahawks did limp into the playoffs. I mean, they needed overtime to beat the Rams. They haven't – I don't know what happened when they went to Germany to take on the Buccaneers in November, because they looked like a completely different team before that game than after that game. So, I think midnight has struck on the Seahawks. I think they've turned into a pumpkin here a little bit. So I'm going to take the 49ers. They dominated both the previous two games against the Seahawks. The Seahawks – my favorite stat to look at is net yards per play. I look at it all the time. The Seahawks, for the first half of the season, ranked in the top 5, if not that, the top 10. They've dropped down to 12th in net yards per play. Bottom 10 if you look at the past few weeks. It's not good in Seattle. So I'm going to lay the points with the 49ers. It is a lot, though. It does make me a little bit nervous. If you're looking for a player prop, I found Christian McCaffrey rushing and receiving yards combined over 113. I think this is similar to your point about J.K. Dobbins, where if McCaffrey doesn't get over like this mark in rushing and receiving, because they have to lean on him, because it's going to be tough to win a playoff game leaning on Brock Purdy. I think they have to lean on McCaffrey. I think in like 3 of his last 5 games, he's eclipsed 100 yards rushing. So if he does that, add in 1 catch or 2 catches in there, and he'd go well over that total as well. So, I like the 49ers, and I like Christian McCaffrey over 113.5 rushing and receiving yards.
What about the second game? Sorry, Zeno, I thought you were asking a question. You just sat there for a second. Don't leave me hanging like that. Come on, man. Come on.
I apologize, teammate. I was just so infatuated with trying to get the Lions back in the playoffs, I couldn't get my mind right.
Okay.
Let's go to the other game. The other game tonight, interesting. Probably one of the hardest games to handicap the weekend. Chargers and Jaguars. I think it's a bad matchup for Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville and teasers is okay. It wouldn't surprise. Look, there's one. If I look at the likelihood of outcomes here, Ian, like the Chargers winning by 10, I think is more likely than necessarily Jacksonville winning outright, if that makes sense. Just because this is a team that throws the ball all over the place. And again, we don't really know what the Jaguars defense is when they face the likes down the stretch of Malik Willis, Josh Dobbs, Davis Mills, and all these bad quarterbacks and bad offenses. That doesn't mean your defense is good. That means your defense beat up on bad quarterbacks. This is not a bad quarterback. This is not a bad offense, even without Mike Williams.
Yeah, that's a good point about the teams that the Jacksonville defense has faced lately, because one of the points I was going to say was about how good they've been playing. But you're right, they have been playing against bad quarterbacks. But I would counter that by saying I actually don't think the Chargers are a good team, to be completely honest. I brought up net yards per play before. It is my favorite stat. I know it doesn't take into consideration things like third down rate, red zone efficiency, turnovers, anything like that. And for those of you watching who don't know net yards per play, it's just the average amount of yards gained per play on offense, subtract the amount of yards given up per play on defense. The Chargers, 27th in the NFL in net yards per play heading into the playoffs, 20th in net yards per play over their last 3 games, 26th in net yards per play on the road. So I haven't been sold on this Chargers team all year. It's not like it was a first half issue. Like I said, even in recent weeks, they haven't been great in that category. Even around like third down and red zone, they're better. They're around middle of the pack, or a top 10 in some of them. But still, I'm not totally sold on this Chargers team, and I think this is just a game where you have to just kind of take the hot team. The Jaguars, I think, are entering the playoffs as one of the hottest teams in the NFL. And I will say one thing the Chargers have done really well recently is rushing the passer over their last 3 games. They have a sack percentage of over 12%. But that's actually one of Jacksonville's biggest strengths, is protecting the passer. They have one of the lowest QB sacked rates in the NFL. So I am going to ride with the Jaguars here to win this game, but it's certainly the most interesting game of the weekend, I think.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know how this game's going to play out. I definitely don't. I'm kind of staying away from this one, actually, when it comes to betting, but I'm looking forward to watching it. Iain, we love having you on. Thank you so much for coming on, giving us your best takes on these games this weekend, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you so much. Take care, guys, and best of luck with your bets this weekend.
Thanks,
Thank
Ian.
you. That is Iain MacMillan. You can follow him on Twitter at Iain MacBet, senior editor for BetSided and host of the Bacon Bets podcast. All right, before we get into our best bets, let's talk really quick, Zeno, about the NBA, because right now we are halfway through the season. So we have some Eastern Conference Championship standings and Western Conference Championship standings. Right now, in the East, the Celtics 1.5 to 1, Bucks 3 to 1, Nets 4.5 to 1, Sixers 7 to 1, Cavs 9 to 1, Heat 20 to 1, Hawks 40 to 1. What bet would you make at this point for who is going to win the Eastern Conference?
Hawks, they're being run by a child right now. So no, we're not taking the Hawks. That aside, look, I got to go with Brooklyn, just from a value standpoint. The fact that you're getting 4.5 to 1. You're in a situation where if you get KD and Kyrie playing at an optimal level, and Ben Simmons, at least from a mind standpoint and a defensive standpoint, look, he almost had a triple-double the other night without scoring a single point, which would have been incredibly impressive. All that said, this is a team I think that's playing like we expected it to play when it was all put together. Boston is just too short of a number for me to really get behind it, although they're going to be the best team in the East and the toughest one to beat. But I would take the Nets in this spot here.
Okay. What about the Western Conference right now? The Nuggets are at 3.5 to 1, Warriors 4 to 1, Clippers 4.5, Grizzlies 4.5, Pelicans 8.5, Suns 8.5, and Mavs 12.5 to 1 odds right now.
I had the Clippers at the beginning of the year at 7.5 to 1. So these numbers are shorter here. So I mean, theoretically, I could stay there. I would still be willing to take a flyer on Memphis. And I said this at the beginning of the year. This is a young team who still has a lot to prove. And so to them, winning the West and getting the number 1 seed matters. It means something. You know, it doesn't matter to teams like Golden State. They don't care. They have way too much veteran experience to go, okay, I'm just going to get in the postseason and we'll win then. You know, it doesn't matter to necessarily a team like Dallas with Luka. Like, okay, if he's going to put us on his back, it doesn't matter whether it's at home or on the road, and it doesn't matter who it's against because we have the best player in the league and he'll carry us there. So I think for teams like that, it doesn't necessarily matter where they get seated. For a team like Memphis, I think the young players there feel like they have to prove to everybody that they've arrived. And that matters to them as far as winning the West. And so, you know, to them, getting home court advantage, seeding, and all that stuff is a big part of the way they're going to play. And, you know, they got to the conference finals last year, or the conference semifinals last year, rather. And you know, they have the talent to do it again, you know, with John Morant and everybody else. So I wouldn't count out Memphis.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things play out halfway through the season. Lots of games still left to be played. We'll see what happens. Let's Bet It, presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Pile up the wins, pile up the money with Superbook. Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas is giving you free money every week you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook, and they'll give you a $5 bonus, up to $50 for betting each week afterwards. So if you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. From superbook.com to Pickswise.com, 3-star plays of the day. Zeno, who do we got today on the site?
We have several wild card plays that are 3-star plays of the day. College hoops play as well, some NBA stuff out there, even a 3-way money line puck game for you. So check out Pickswise.com for all the 3-star plays of the day.
Pickswise.com. All right, our best bets. Who you got heading into this wild card weekend today?
Talked about it all week long, and it's the only play for me in this game with any sense of confidence between Seattle and San Francisco, under 42.5. The first 2 meetings between these two teams both stayed under this total. The second meeting, the one in Seattle, where Brock Purdy actually played, the 49ers scored just 21 points. Pete Carroll, throughout his career, has been great at keeping games close and against the number when it comes to playing the San Francisco 49ers. With this total sitting as low as it is and the spread as big as it is, it's a really hard spot for San Francisco to cover this 9.5. And that being the case, this has to stay under, because if this goes over, that's the only way San Fran can cover this number, by scoring a ton of points and getting in the 30s again. Seattle's done a good job of taking care of the football. If you look at the 49ers under Brock Purdy, they've got a ton of takeaways. The last matchup between these two teams, San Francisco only got one takeaway from Seattle. It ended up costing Seattle a cover in the game, likely. Let's hope they don't do that again. Seattle takes care of the football, and they keep this one close, but both teams stay under the 42.5.
Yeah, I also like the under too, but my best bet is definitely going to be the Seahawks plus 9.5 in this spot. A lot of that has to do with your under bet. I know that the Niners have the best defense right now in the NFL. They're allowing 16.3 points per game, which is first in the NFL. Also, they held the Seahawks to a total of 20 points over the 2 games this season. I think that in a spot like this, the Seahawks offense is going to want to be on the field the entire time. And I think if they hold on to the ball, the 49ers don't score as many points, right? Because Brock Purdy isn't necessarily going to gain his team a win. He's going to be solid. I know he's only had 4 interceptions, but he's gotten the ball at a lot of good field positions because the 49ers defense has 30 takeaways on the year, second in the NFL, which is giving his team good field position on the offensive side. I see this game being closer than people think. I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a 3-point game. I think that probably the Niners are going to win by a touchdown, something like that. The Seahawks are going to get a backdoor cover, but I like the total to go under. My best bet is the Seahawks plus 9.5. It's going to be fun. Wild card weekend starting today. Looking forward to it. That's it for us today, guys. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Mark Zinno. I'm Lauren Jabara. Best of luck tonight, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for the Sunday NFL wildcard games. Until then, peace.